Hello, my friends. Hope you're having a fantastic day or night wherever you are. Today, I'm back to talk to David all about owls. As some of you may have seen, this episode is going to be all about wildlife, how you find it, how you capture it, what you do, what's really successful, what kind of how do you make a business out of it, all those wonderful things. So if this is not for you, completely understand. All good. I'll see you in a couple of weeks when we do some more business related stuff. But as I was getting into wildlife, I was very, very interested and very, very interested in having a conversation with him. So I invited him on to have that conversation. I'm now going to pass over to him to introduce himself a little bit more. But thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me once again. And I'll see you in just a moment's time.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dave Driver. I'm art director originally, and over the years got into more and more into photography, and then set my own photographic studios up. So basically, that was my past.
Fantastic. And, I think, obviously I do a lot of research before the show, and I was looking into your kind of some of what of your past. I tried to do a mix of research where I know enough where I can lead the conversation or have a hopefully an educated conversation, but not enough so there's that curiosity.
Yeah.
And obviously, for those who've been following my content for a long time, they'll know I've more recently in the last month or two got into wildlife photography and more pushed towards the videography side and etc. And then of course I found your beautiful stuff with owls specifically. I mean, why not? Let's start there. I mean, how did I know we just briefly discussed it briefly off the record, but were you always interested in owls? I mean, was it specifically like the challenge aspect of them,
Yeah.
or
I mean,
what made you want to shoot owls?
I mean, really, I've always been interested in birds since I was a kid. I was a member of the Young Ornithologists Club when I was like 12, and it's always been something there. And I've always liked wildlife. Originally, as I was saying to you, when I finished shooting fashion and product photography, which was my main core of my business, I did, the big problem all the way through was a client's brief, and it sort of shackled me to what I actually wanted to do. So when I finished, what I decided to do is just shoot wildlife, wherever I wanted, whatever I wanted, and then try to sell the product as what I had done. So I picked endangered species and then went all over the world. We went to Rwanda shooting silverback gorillas and up to the far north shooting polar bears. And I've been all over. Spent a lot of time in Africa, where I went sort of 3 or 4 times a year. Now, as we all know, COVID came a few years ago, and that sort of scuppered all that. And my Africa trips were brought to a very abrupt halt. So I was looking for something that could keep my interests and my passion for wildlife photography, and that I could keep on doing. Canon had just brought out a new camera as well, the R5 at that time, and that was something I just got my hands on, and I desperately wanted to just keep shooting. So I decided to shoot owls, specifically. Very challenging. I mean, all wildlife's challenging in as much as finding it, being able to get close enough to photograph it. But the thing about owls and all birds to a degree is that A, flight shots are a nightmare, and B, with owls, it's all at the wrong end of the day. It's all at night time. It's all at dark. All your numbers are wrong. So with all photography, anyone knows about photography, you're always balancing your ISO, your shutter speed, and your f-stop to try to get. It's always a compromise between those three. And with owls, it gives you. There's nothing left. There's all three are really, really tight. So you're trying to compromise all the time between the f-stop, the shutter speed, and the ISO. So it was a real challenge. That's how I perceived it. So I set myself the challenge of shooting all the 5 UK owls. And I was trying to get all the 5 shot in the first year, which I didn't actually achieve, but I got 4 of them.
Wow. I mean, I think, there's lots I could ask you there, but I think just to really quickly start on, I mean, how do you go about finding like these owls? Because obviously, as you say, they obviously hunt during the evening or as the sun's setting, etc. I mean, were you just like, did you build a habit of going on walks and then you ended up finding them,
Well,
or like?
first of all, I just started researching the different sorts of owls. There's, as I said, there's 5 species. So there's the barn owl and the little owl, the long-eared owl, the short-eared owl, and the tawny owl. Now, the tawny owl is purely nocturnal. It roosts during the day, so you can find it. Incredible camouflage, incredibly difficult to find. Often heard, rarely seen, although it's Britain's most common owl. The barn owl tends to hunt at the cusp of sunrise and sunset. So from the research I did, I found that your best chance is when it's actually breeding season, because it's having to go out and hunt not only for itself but for its partner and all the young. So it has to set off a lot earlier to do a lot more work. So that was one I thought I'd start on, the barn owl. Little owl's out quite a long time. The long-eared owl is incredibly difficult. It's a very elusive owl, very hard to find and very, very rare. Believe it or not, that's the first one I found, and that's the one I got most of my shots of it in that first year. And then the other one is a short-eared owl. Again, that numbers increase at the back end of the year because they come in from Scandinavia. All these things I found out from researching. So I decided I'd start on barn owls and looking for that. And basically what I did is every night I'd go out around sunset, just driving up and down on habitat that I thought that be amongst on the moorlands. And I'd just sit and watch. And then when I saw one, I'd sit and park up. And like most animals, they tend to be creatures of habit. So they'd come out and almost you could set your clock by them. Some of these owls, they'd be there 7:05 every night on the same rock, and they tend to do that. So what I do is I drive and I'd watch, and I'd spend a few weeks watching, seeing what happens, and then obviously I have the camera with me, but I wouldn't necessarily take pictures. I just watch the habits. And what you tend to find is you'll find that they've got a little route they do. So they'll come up from where they roost. They'll do the route, over the same fields. And with barn owls, they don't actually have a territory, so they have a home range, which will overlap with other owls, not necessarily barn owls, but other types of owls. And they'll learn their own home range for navigation, for where the big numbers of voles are, and also if they get into trouble, they know where they are within that circuit. So the flight by day, the flight by night, and they're incredibly affiliated with it. So yeah, I just sat and watched, and then when you pick up a bit of a habit, you think, right, well, you're trying to predict it, right? It's going to come out there, it's going to go through that field, it's going to go over that wall, and then all of a sudden, believe it or not, it does it. Now, not every time. You think you've cracked it, and then all of a sudden it does something completely different, as all wildlife does. But 9 times out of 10, it did do that, which was great. So then you start thinking, right, well, it's going to go behind that wall. It's about 7:15. I'd hide behind that wall, and with a bit of luck, it'll come that way. And surprisingly, a lot of times it did. As I say, when it's breeding season, they tend to be a lot more focused on getting the prey to take it back to the young. So they're fairly tuned into that. They're less bothered about you. To be honest, I obviously get dressed up in camouflage and I'm very quiet and I do all the things you're supposed to do. But I'm damn sure that I was known there. And I mean, they can hear a mouse's heartbeat at 100 yards. They can certainly hear me clumping about. And I think it's sort of a courtesy that I wear camouflage, but I'm pretty sure they know I'm there.
Do you think it's something which, I mean, like obviously we're talking about owls here, but do you think it's something that like most, kingfishers or blue tits or, pick your species, right? Yeah. There's a similar like predictable pattern that most people, because I know that when people started, especially, when you're trying to get something elusive like a kingfisher, for example, yeah. It's this kind of, do I just sit in one spot where I've seen them before, or is there certain routes or patterns and so on? I mean, is it very common, would you say, like across most of the species?
I think it is common, yeah. I mean, I'm no expert in it, apart from, I suppose, experts, the hours you put in. I've put thousands of hours in, so in that way I'm an expert, but I don't actually know. But from my from my knowledge, yeah, I think it happens a lot. It certainly happens in the big cats, and domestic cats. They have a route which they'll do every single night. Tigers and lions and cheetahs, they'll do the same route. So you can actually tap into that to give us a bigger opportunity. But then they can just do what they want some nights and not play ball.
Yeah, of course. I mean, quickly, it'd be wrong of me not to talk about settings and like how to actually capture it. I mean, do you kind of like, you have a rough idea of what you want to shoot and you pre-set your camera and then it's just about waiting for the moment and then like shoot through it? Or
I think over the years, I've developed more. When I set off, I have a vision of what I want. I rarely go into a situation where I don't know the environment. it's normally been researched. I've been many times. So I'll say, right, well, I know that barn wall is going to go into shadow at 7:30. I know the owl's going to come across it. With a bit of luck, it'll catch the sunset. It'll catch the sunlight if I place myself here. So it's going to light itself up against the shadow and look really quite impressive. And you can sort of, to a degree, you can compose a shot, which is for wildlife is, it's tricky. And I think really that's why my shots are different to other people's, because they are sort of considered and composed. And I'll put myself in a situation where I can achieve what I was hoping to achieve when I set out. 9 times, not 9 times out of 10, but quite often you'll sit yourself down, something else will happen, and then you think, oh, that's an opportunity, and I'll exploit that, and that's the route. Your routes change, and that's the way you go. But I always try to set off with a vision of what I want to achieve that night. And after I've done it, I mean, I've been doing it sort of 5 or 6 years now. I've got most owls in most positions in most situations. So it's sort of a question, why do you still do it? Well, you still do it because I absolutely love it. It's a massive, massive buzz. Watching a bird come towards you. It's a buzz thinking I've planned it, so I know that, if I sit there, it's going to come, and then it does. It's a huge buzz. Yeah. So,
do you believe in the phrase of right place, right time, or do you believe it's simply down to the concept of luck being a mix between opportunity mixed with preparation, right? Because it sounds like you're more leaning towards that end, which is no, I've done the research, no, I've been here a billion times, and I know the flight pattern, so actually I'm just stacking the odds here.
Yeah.
It's not really luck, right place, right time. It's more I'm stacking the odds.
I think luck plays a massive part in it. I think anyone who says it doesn't is not telling the truth. I mean, you've got to be lucky. You really have got to be lucky. You can go out, you can miss something by a fraction of a second, or you can get it by a fraction of a second. I got a set of pictures that went to the press a few years ago, and I just happened to be in the field. I'd watched the barn owl come out. Yes, I'd done my research. I knew where it was going to go. Off it went, as predicted. And then I heard a bit of a noise and looked. Hey, he's caught the vole really quickly. He's on his way back. Put my camera up to see him coming back, and he was attacked by a kestrel who had a little aerial battle and eventually stole his prey. It resulted in an incredible set of pictures. Yes, I was in the right place. It was luck. It's pure luck. And I think you need a huge amount of luck. I think what you do, I think most of it is luck, but you've got to be prepared to capitalize on that luck when it happens. So you're given an opportunity, you've got to be fast. You've got to be able to change your settings. You've got to know exactly what to do. Because when I shot that kestrel, I thought, crikey, I've just been shooting whatever on at 2.8. I've got a very narrow depth of field. Am I going to have caught it? And unbeknown to me, I'd actually changed the settings automatically without even knowing I'd done it. So I actually flicked the lever and knocked it down to F7 and got a bit more depth of field. I didn't even know I'd done it. So I think it's loads of luck, and then being able to cope with the situation when it hits you in the face, and really be able to sort of do your magic then.
Yeah, and I think for me, speaking as someone who's obviously done video for a very long time.
Yeah.
You'll naturally get to a point where you'll sort of go, okay, in this scenario I need to tweak my exposure down or up or etc. I need to, as you say, adapt that depth of field, etc. But I think it goes without saying, I mean, maybe not in an owl's case, but you've also talked about, obviously, you've shot polar bears, you've shot more what could be described as dangerous animals, right? And these animals are in the wild and etc. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how do we stay safe? How do we from our own perspective, how do we stay safe as wanting to capture these images, but being able to capture the images, but also how do we respect the wild animals or the where we are from your own experience? I mean, how do we go about doing that? Because I think some people can be really intimidated by, maybe not when they're filming less threatening animals, but when they look to potentially go into the realms of harder animals to capture, but also potentially more dangerous in that respect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's about respect. It's about respecting the environment. It's about actually putting the animals first. I mean, yes, you're there to take the picture. Yeah, you're getting a great buzz from it. But I always I try not to alter the animal's behavior. Yes, by being there, I'm intrusive to a degree. Yes, I'm sure the animals know I'm there, but I try not to alter their natural behaviour, and I always stay at a distance, and that's what your long lens is for. I shoot on a 600 or 800 mm lens. I keep my distance, and the number of people you see you know, when I've seen an owl, and then there's been a few people, dog walkers, have seen me taking pictures, and they've gone up with the iPhone right up to it, and then the mother's not been able to come back to the young to feed it. You know, you've got to respect, you've got to respect the animal, and by doing that, you know, you're going to be put yourself in a safer position as possible. I would have thought.
Yeah, and I think I think that's really important. But also, I think I mean, I was having a conversation yesterday about the challenge of getting a shot, and I think for me, part of the appeal can actually be the fact that it is difficult, right? Like if a shot, like I'll give you an example. You can go to a zoo and you can take photos of animals there, right?
Yeah.
But how challenging is that?
Yeah. Well, it's not.
Probably not very challenging, right?
You can get, I mean, yes, you can get great pictures. You can get, I mean, I spend, an example, I went to Botswana once, lion tracking. Now, I could have gone to a zoo, yeah, or maybe not as extreme as that. I could have gone to Kenya, where they're almost guaranteed you're going to see one. But I decided to go out in Botswana tracking these lions. Took me 3 days to actually find them. And after your second day, you're thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? But I tell you, on the third day, when you see the lioness taking some prey back to 4 or 5 little cubs under a bush, the buzz from that is just, it is tremendous. And the other thing is, some of the pictures I like best are not necessarily the most technical, or necessarily that they will view it as the most creative image, but the captured moments in time of a memory I've got. Another example is there's one shot of an owl I've got on a post, which I absolutely love. It's a nice shot. It's not anything that we would say is an award-winning shot. Nice enough, but the reason why I like it so much is I remember the very moment seeing it on the post, and I was 2 or 3 fields away, and creeping up behind a cow with me 800 lens almost on this cow's back, getting closer and closer towards it, thinking it's going to go, it's going to go, it's going to go, and it not going, so I got right up to it, and that is just, and it's those little memories that just they're just fantastic, and make it all worthwhile, and make you keep doing it and doing it and doing it. As I mentioned earlier, the most common owl is the tawny, and that is the only one in that first year that I couldn't get pictures of. I just couldn't get it for love and money. So what I did is I built a tawny box with my grandson, and I put it up in a woodland, which I planted 26 years ago when I bought this piece of land. It came last year. It had young in there, and the young came out of the box, and the joy of seeing that an owl in a box that I built with my grandson hung in a tree that I'd planted 26 years ago is just special. It's just special.
And I think obviously we do it because we're passionate, but stories like that is, I think, I guess the generational stories that potentially you'll tell your grandkids or your kids, and then they'll pass on.
Yeah, well, that's it. I built this box with my grand. I mean, I take out my grandkids now in camouflage, just because then they're like granddad, and we go out looking, and I think it's great. It's a good bonding with the kids, and my eldest grandson's 12. He's there's a 12-year-old kid noisy, and he said, "Can I come with you, Grand?" I said, "No, you want me to keep quiet." I've never known him as quiet. Absolutely crept really quietly. And the look on his face, because I was sitting there and we're waiting for this tawny owl to come out of the tree and come towards us, and it flew through the tree straight towards us. And the look on his face is just incredible. It's just inspiring that interest and that excitement of nature in other people, in the younger generation. And I mean, it's a great thing for your body and for your mind, being out in nature.
Yeah, and I think I mean, there's a lot of people obviously talking about mental health at the moment, and fair comments and fair points to make. And I think that was the other point I was going to mention, which is and the things that I've been said to me.
Yeah.
Now I've taken on wildlife more, capturing it, but also being in it a lot more, is that massive, that natural kind of, I'm a lot calmer. I'm a bit more, I guess you could say, in zen with it in some ways, but. For those who are maybe interested in a tawny owl specifically, I mean, you said they were very, very nocturnal, right? So that poses a question for us wanting to potentially capture one, because there's no light, right?
Yeah.
So is it purely just night, or is it like, can you capture them at sunrise and dusk, etc.?
I actually don't believe in using artificial light on any animals at all. Really, I think it's too much of a disturbance and intrusion. So I just shoot them with available light. Now, as I said, they only hunt and are active at night, but the roost during the day in trees. So you can be very lucky. You can go for a walk and you can just see one roosting in a tree and get pictures of it. Around around the breeding season, the dad will be close by the nest, just watching over to make sure, the mum will be sat in the nest. He'll feed her for a month before she has any eggs. Then she'll have the eggs. And he'll be feeding all that time, and then he'll watch over while the young come out, and then both parents will come out and watch over. So you've got opportunities then of being able to see them in a sort of a roosting environment, watching the young. So you can do it. It's just that the camouflage is incredible. I mean, they're incredibly camouflaged birds. I went to South Africa in February looking for the spotted eagle owl. Again, at one point I was 15 foot away and it was right in front of me and I couldn't see it. And I'm used to looking for owls, camouflage is incredible. And I think like Tony's, like the great eagle owl, they've got this philosophy, well, if I sit still, I'm that good that he won't see me. Whereas, you would pigeon will think, shit, it's coming and do one. But yeah, the owls are very confident in their ability to disguise themselves, and they'll just sit there and balls it out.
Is that something which, people just need to get their quote unquote 10,000 hours in looking for, right? Like seeing a camouflaged bird in a tree, or an owl up a tree, or etc., or like picking out those pieces of wildlife in a scene. Is that just something you just have to sort of get used to doing because you've seen the environment a million times?
Yeah, I would have said yes, apart from I've just invested last week in a thermal scope, which sort of a bit cheating really, but it's an incredible bit of kit. You look through this thing and it gives you a heat image, and although the feathers do insulate quite well, it picks out pretty good. But yeah, it's a case of knowing. Back to the original question, it's a case of the more you do it, the better you get at it, and it's a case of knowing where they sit in the tree. They tend to in little branches up against the main trunk, and they'll squat in there. And it's a case of knowing the sort of height they'll sit at, and just being aware. I mean, I think it's surprising if you went to the countryside and sit down in a field and stay still for half an hour, you'll be amazed what's going to go past you. Hares and rabbits, badgers, foxes, deer, all sorts. And they're there. They're there all the time, and you just don't know. I mean, I put up a barn owl box last year and had nothing on it at all, I thought. And then I noticed the tony owls from my tony owl box were coming and perching on the barn owl box and hunting from it, because they were hunting from the platform, using it as a platform to get the prey from. So I put a camera up on that. 2 nights ago, barn owl came in. Now, has he been there before? I don't know. I'm thrilled. So whether he'll bring a mate back, or whether he'll use that soon, I have no idea. But there's a lot going on, and you've no idea. Again, I put the cameras in the trees in the woodland to monitor the owls, and there's jays and woodpeckers I didn't know I had that are there. There's deer walking through I didn't know I had. It's incredible.
It's really nice to hear, because I think sometimes we lean into this kind of like social media, and I was going to ask you about social media as well, and I will come on to it in a moment, but I think a lot of people, they sit and go, oh, those wildlife photographers are so lucky, oh, those wildlife photographers are so X, Y, Z. And I think if these people took a percentage chance to step back and say, actually, look, I'm just going to spend some time in nature expecting to get nothing, right, whether you have a camera with you or not, I think you would notice. And one of the best pieces of advice I was given by a very good friend of mine when I was learning and wanting to start learning habitat was just go on a walk. Right, and just do that walk repeatedly around the same time, and you'll start to see, oh, there's a deer in that field, oh, there's a squirrel here, oh, you hear an owl here, oh, you heard this bird here, so on. Especially if you can go from, as I say, hedge, then through a field, then through a wood, then back to a hedge, so on. In that respect. And I think it's something that, especially something that I've learned is, and something a good asset to have, is being overall patient with the results, but overall patient with what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things there you've touched on. One is people saying, "Oh, aren't you lucky?" Yeah. And I said before, luck plays a huge part, but you tend to make your own luck. And the more hours you put in, it's like someone said once, the more I practice, the luckier I get. It's you've got to put those hours in to start with. The actual shot of an owl, thousandth of a second, but it's those other 1,000 hours you've put in research, preparation, times you've gone out and got nothing and come back disappointed, times you've gone out and nearly got it and just missed focus, and then you get the one and, oh, aren't you lucky? Yes, I was, but I've got a lot of unlucky times behind me that you don't know about. So yeah,
Yeah, and I think like anything, it's a muscle which we can choose to continue to build on.
yeah.
In that respect. And I mean, obviously, you've had a lot of success with your social media accounts and what you're doing, with the owls and obviously previous animals
Yeah.
before. But what role do you think? I mean, it's kind of a mixed blessing, right? Because of course we can get all this lovely exposure, we can get these new opportunities, etc. But also, it can be, and some people do call it a bit of a highlight reel. I mean, what's your opinion? What role do you think social media specifically plays in, I guess you could say, your wildlife photography career?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm from a generation before all that. I was very lucky. I'm not a great lover of social media. I do use it. I use it as a tool. It is quite important. The honest truth about this is, my son's gone into photography, and it all started the social media thing. It got 20,000 followers, and he was laughing at me because he got 12 or whatever. And I said, "Oh, we had a bit of a laugh about it." So I started posting just to see if I could get as many as he did, and then I overtook him, and off it went. But I mean, it is a bit of a burden. I do feel sometimes I'm tied into it. I have to post. If you don't post all the time, your numbers do drop off. Is that important? Not really. But again, it's useful because now, like, you obviously found my account and I'm talking to you. A lot of people will ring me and say, "I've seen this. I thought you might be interested in it," and it gets me more opportunities. I get a lot of companies sending me, Wi-Fi cameras for my trees for free, to do tests on. I got also a product, and I think it's a good thing to understand and be involved with. And at my age, I'm quite pleased I'm doing it. 70-year-old influencer is pretty cool. But yeah, it has mixed blessings. I mean, it has its place, but I think it can be an evil thing.
I think it's like anything. I think we need to be careful with our relationship to it, relationship to the numbers, relationship to the likes, the comments, etc. And I think sometimes, personally anyway, we can kind of put our own work on it didn't do well on social, so it's a bad photograph.
Yeah, well, no, well,
Or it's a bad video,
yeah,
or it's a bad this, about
yeah.
that.
I've never really gone into that. I mean, you got to bear in mind that social media, they're all driven by these algorithms. So you can have the best shot in the world, and if it's not hitting the right buttons for who knows what reasons, it's not going to do anything. Doesn't make it less a picture. It's exact same picture. And to be honest, I don't really I don't care what other people think about the pictures. I put them on there because I really like them. Some do well, some don't. Often the ones that do better aren't the ones I particularly like. I do post every day because, as I say, it keeps the audience. It keeps they're fickle lot. Social media audience. They'll soon. If I tell you, when I started doing this, it's on my social media. I did landscapes. I did landscapes for years, and I built up, I don't know, 20, 30,000 landscape followers. And then I went into owls, and it just stopped. I got no more followers. Because all the people wanted landscape, and all the algorithm was feeding me landscape photographers. I did nothing at all, and it took me another year then to get the owl one up. And when I stopped doing that, I suspect it'll all stop again. But again, I don't take it too seriously. It's a useful tool. It's quite a fun thing. There's a lot of people I've met in the field who I can catch up with their work and see what they're doing. So yeah, it has its place, but I don't think you can take it too seriously.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's about understanding that it is a tool, and I think that like a lot of the things we've discussed today, it's a tool that we need to understand how to use. But I think sometimes, and I've seen this with my partner as well, she sometimes idolizes other pages or idolizes areas, and says, I guess in some ways, I or others can feel quite down when our page isn't doing as well. Our content isn't doing. It's been seen to so many, and I think
it's a meaningless thing, really. And it's totally out of your control, and it really doesn't go on your ability or the quality necessarily. It goes on. Who knows what it goes on? But
and I think that's really important to not apply. And the piece of advice I would give for those listening, don't don't look at the likes, the followers, etc. as like, this is how good I am as X,
There's nothing.
right? Because
No.
I think it's quite dangerous to do so. But I think I mean, I hope you don't mind. I mean, how did you sort of? Because I know we briefly touched on it with agencies using your work in papers and etc. I mean, was that always the objective from the beginning when you moved away from corporate side? Or
no, when I moved away, I mean, to be honest, I moved away because I'd had enough, and I felt I'd made enough money. I mean, everyone wants more money, don't they? But I'd made enough to be comfortable, to live how I wanted to live, do what I wanted to do, and I thought, right, I'm gonna enjoy my life. I was sort of early 40s, and I did a lot of traveling and a lot of things that maybe now I'd struggle to do. So it was the right thing at the time for me to do. But when I mean, if you've been involving on the creative side and with photography and how things look, it's sort of in you. You know, it's something you need to express. I mean, I suppose really I'm a failed painter. I mean, I went to art school. I was never really good enough. I was never good enough to get across what I wanted to do. And photography became a sort of tool for me to express myself. I had the ideas, I've got the vision, which is why I was a good art director. I have the vision, but I needed something for that to be the catalyst. And photography was that. So I always enjoyed taking pictures. I always felt a need to create. And these days, when we've moved away from film onto digital, you can do so much more in editing. You can actually it's like I think it's like a painting. You can actually put a lot more of yourself into it and make the shot your own. And then I'll go out, like I said, with a preconceived idea of what I want to achieve, and I'll try to get that or get shots that I can work into to something that to achieve my goal.
do you, when you work with stock agencies that sell your images, do you have a rough idea of like the editorial reality that they're looking for, or do you literally just go out and go, I'm going to do this, I think this is really fun and really cool, and then I'm going to send it in, and if it happens, it happens. Great, cool.
Yeah, I do that, but I'm in a very fortunate position, whereas I'm financially secure now by doing all the treadmill crap that I've done for years. You know, the product photography, the fashion stuff. I did a lot of mail order, the day-to-day grind of it, just getting your head down, shooting it and making the money. And in those days, I think it was damn so easy than it is now. I've done that. I've got myself into a position of security, so I can do that, and I can go out and if it was from a business point of view, it's not the thing to do. But I'm not in that sort of position. I'm in a position now where I can say, right, this is what I want to do. I'm going to do it. If it fails in someone else's eyes, it's a success in mine. I've achieved what I want to do. So, like for the polar bears, so I really want to go see them, and I really want to spend time with them. I did the shots, got some nice ones, put them into agencies. If they sell them, fantastic. If they don't, I don't. It doesn't really matter. But surprisingly, often when you take that attitude, there's no, and the pressure's not on you. Things sort of develop more naturally. And it's always been quite successful. I've actually made money from back catalogues and stuff I've sold, and it's like making a record, isn't it? Once it's on the platform, there it's there forever. I'm selling stuff now that I shot years ago that suddenly people come, and I'm also selling. I sold an owl picture last week to an Australian agency for some ad campaign, which was a really, really nice amount of money. And that just came out of nowhere. And again, without the social media, they wouldn't have found me. So that is why I think it's important, and also a very useful tool, but I don't take it seriously.
I think that's a really important point. I mean, there's a couple of bits I'll touch on, and I'm aware of time, so I think, thank you so much for the time, and thank you for being so generous with your information. But I think, the concept of success is a really common one, and I see this in business, and I interview a lot of people in business, and what is your definition of success, right? Obviously, you've worked very, very hard for a long period of time to get to the position where now your reality is what a lot of people would dream of, right? Which is, basically been able to do, quote unquote, what they want, right? And being able to make some or a good amount of money, depending on the week, depending on the month, right? And in any business, especially a creative business, being able to do that. But I think it's about appreciating and saying, okay, well, this is part of my journey. This is where I am. And maybe someone who's younger or someone closer to my age, I'm in my mid to late 20s, and, I've got so much time ahead of me, and all I know is I need to grow, I need to grow, I need to grow. That's all. I need to get better. That's the idea, whether that's a business or what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and the rest will work itself out, is my belief.
I think that's probably right. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I have been successful, But that was never really my main aim. My main aim was to do something I really love doing. And I think if you do something you love doing, and you're naturally good at, because that's why you love it, then everything else will just follow. It will fall into place. And I've worked for agencies and places where I've been exploited, and I knew it, and it was frustrating. But I kept at it and kept at it, and I've always loved what I've done. I've always enjoyed it, and I've always done my best, no matter what they paid me, and I've always tried hard, no matter what they paid me. And I think it just follows. I think success again. Yeah, what is success? It isn't money, and that's easy for someone with money to say. But it isn't that. It's that internal peace with yourself, and getting up in the morning and thinking, "Great, I can now do this today," or and looking forward to what you're going to do in that day, and enjoying yourself, and on the creative side, it's a bit easier, I think, because it's easy to get that buzz from something you've done and and created, and yeah. So I think you're gonna do what you're good at, do what you believe, and work hard.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I think it was Alex Hormozi who said that you've got to kind of optimize for what your drive is, right? And then for creatives, for business owners, for people like us, it's going to be that meaningful change.
Yeah.
It's going to be that constant growth. It's going to be that chasing a sense of perfection without necessarily worrying about is it perfection or is it not, because perfection means you basically don't do it, because you're constantly trying to get better. And there's lots of terminologies around that, but the TLDR version is do it repeatedly and focus on that 1% improvement to make sure that you're creating and you're building and you're constantly developing your skill set so that you can be quote unquote perfect, you can be quote unquote successful. But for those who've really enjoyed this conversation, for those who maybe want to see some of these owl pictures that aren't aware, etc., where can people connect with you? Where can people see your work?
The best thing is Instagram, which I've just been selecting. But yeah, what is it? Driver.David on Instagram. That's where I tend to put most of my hours up. I have a website, but crikey, I mean, I just, since I've stopped selling stuff, and I just, everything's way out of date. But, and again, I probably do it for my own enjoyment now, and everything else just comes from that. But I mean, I do sell them, which is, I suppose, is really, really good. But it's about, and the other thing, just to go back on what you said about perfection, I always saw myself really as a perfectionist. I've never ever been totally happy with what I've shot. There's always something, and that is a real curse, because it leads, and the frustration. I mean, especially with like the owl photography, where everything's against you, the light and everything's against you, and to get the perfect shot is incredibly well. I just think there is one, and that's what keeps you striving, and that's what makes you better. And all I can say is, yeah, I'm never happy with anything that I necessarily do, but I'm happier now with the results I'm getting with the owls than I was a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. So you can see yourself improve, and you're just going to use that as a thing. And another thing you mentioned about patience. I am the most impatient person in the world. People say, "Oh, aren't you patient?" And I think it's really good it's been really good for me now. And I am ridiculously patient. I can wait by a tree for an hour. I can wait for a leopard for 3 hours, and time goes by, and it just doesn't bother me at all. But I'm not a patient person. How strange is that? And I think it's. Well, when you're suddenly absorbed in something, I think it's.
I think I think from what I've gathered from wildlife specifically, there's a difference between being patient just for the sake of being patient, and then there's patience with an objective in mind.
Yeah.
Right. So when it comes to waiting for an animal to appear, and it's going to appear, or you think the odds are in your favor for it to appear within the next couple of hours, then it's being patient for an objective. It's not just being patient for the sake of it. And I think they're different things.
Yeah, you're right.
Because one is wasted time, the other is investing time.
Yeah.
Right? But for those who have got this far and have been listening, what final piece of advice would you give them, whether they're starting out in business or they want to start wildlife photography, and they want to build that kind of resilience of, I'm going to go and try and find that owl. I'm going to go try and find that kingfisher. I'm going to go try and find that blue tit, great tit, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, well, there's only one thing. You've got to keep doing it. You've got to keep at it over and over. I mean, I don't need to do anything, and I'm out every day. I'm up early. I'm out, silly times of night. I do it all the time. I absolutely love it. If you love it, then do it, and do it as much as your partner will let you do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Fantastic. We'll cut there. Thank you ever so much. Thank you so much for joining me, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from this very different episode. But we're very curious to see how it does. And let me know if you would like to see more like it. I'll be sure to find some more wildlife people to talk to. Just to mix it up. The business stuff is great. Business stuff is wonderful. We'll always do it. But been getting into wildlife, so I thought I would also do some wildlife conversation-based stuff as well. So thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me. If you would like to miss the next business-related video, wildlife-related video, etc., then why not be subscribed to the channel so you do not miss next week's episode. And I'll see you very, very soon.